An Indian guy commits suicide because of how long Avatar 2 was. Welcome to our review on Avatar 2. I give it a 6.8 per 10. I watched it in 3D actually. And let's start by talking about it. Why is 6.8? I felt that the first 2 hours of Avatar 2 were as if I was watching the Discovery Channel, to be honest, or Animal Planet. It was just visuals and focus on animals. The last hour was good. I'm gonna talk about it in a bit, but considering the first 2 hours, yes, everyone knows it's slow. It took too much time to build up. And when I look at many of the early scenes, I felt they were unnecessary. The scene where the antagonist discovers himself as being in the Navy uniform, I don't care of this discovery and all of that. There was a good focus on the family early on. That was good because it was helping us getting connected to the characters and getting connected to their interaction between each other. But again, it took so long for the story to develop and it was so slow. I feel that the story also was a little overpopulated. There was too many characters to the point where I didn't know who the protagonist was. You can argue that it was Jake, but he didn't get the POV that was necessary for us to follow his story. And when I look at his family, for example, I don't necessarily think that I was connected to them to the point where I felt sorry to the child dying at the end. And we knew someone was going to die because whenever you have a group of people going through a journey, at least one of them is going to die. This is kind of something that you know early on as a filmmaker and as a person who watches a lot of movies. You know that one of them is going to die. And they weren't developed enough, I think, for us to be feel sorry for them at the end. Yes, there was a lot of time to develop them, but I felt that we spent so much time learning how they are becoming good swimmers. And when I look at their struggles, it was mostly them struggling, trying to become swimmers. Yes, there was this whole idea of them being invaded and all of that, but I didn't feel that there was this psychological struggle of them sustaining that invasion. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't done the best way. Maybe I missed something, but I feel that the development wasn't enough for me to care about them that much. I actually took a break watching the movie around the mark where the child is learning how to swim. So I took a break there. I went to get popcorn and come back. I felt it was necessary because the movie tires you. And by the time you get to the good part, which is the last hour, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, you need to be ready for that 1 hour. If you're sleepy the whole time, you're not going to enjoy the last hour. So when I look at the last hour, it was great. The fighting scenes, the conflict was great. The angle, I loved the angle of when they were shooting with the ship sinking. I love that angle. I think it's similar to the Dutch angle that people use in fighting scenes. And I loved it. I loved that visual. It was interesting. And my problem is in this last hour, I think my only problem was with the main fight between Jake and the antagonist. I want to talk about that. And for a few seconds, I feel that this is an issue I've been seeing recently in many of the productions being made, which is they are intercutting the main fight scene with other scenes. Now, I have a problem with that. Why? Because this is supposedly the main fight scene where you reach the peak conflict level in the story. And I love fight scenes that are continuous. So where there's a build up to the fight where I want to see them. I want to see the back and forth between the characters and see who's winning because we know Jake is gonna win, right? So we have to be involved in this scene for a long amount of time for us to believe that at a certain point he might lose. And this is the trick in most movies that filmmakers should follow, which is we know the protagonist is gonna win. We know the protagonist is not gonna die, but the filmmaker has to make us believe that, oh, maybe Jake will lose. Maybe Jake will not reach his goal. Maybe Jake will die. And in order for that to happen in a fight scene, it has to be continuous. It has to be made in a way that get us involved so that we know or at least think that, oh, maybe Jake is losing. And when you intercut it with other things, you're ruining this vibe and this ability for us to absorb such a possibility of Jake losing. And we saw it in Obi-Wan Kenobi when they were intercutting the final fight. We saw it when Thor Love and Thunder when they were intercutting the final fight with the kids, the final fight between Thor and the God Butcher with the kids attacking the other spirits and all of that. In the main fight, which is supposed to be the peak level of conflict of the story, where the whole story is narrowed down to this scope of conflict, to this scope of obstacle that the protagonist needs to overcome. I don't want intercuts with other thing because I need it to be continuous and it's more enjoyable. You'll notice that these fight scenes are more enjoyable when you watch them continuously. And again, I'm going to repeat the point so that we believe at a certain point the protagonist might actually lose, so that when the protagonist wins, where our expectations are reversed and this gives us a good feeling. My best example would be the final fight between Moff Gideon and the Mandalorian, where that was great fight. I loved it, and I recommend everyone to see it. And it was continuous fight. It was high pace. It was nice, and it was great. Now, when I look at Avatar in general, again, it felt like a Discovery Channel at the beginning. I was watching Animal Planet. I didn't care. The movie was so overpopulated, and I didn't feel that connected to the characters. The story seemed very formulated, and that's why I only give it a 6.8. If it wasn't for the last hour where I loved the angles and the high pace, I would have probably given it below 6. So if you like visuals, just go for it. I watched it in 3D. Okay, you enjoy some of the 3D aspect of it, but that was it. I don't expect visuals to carry movies anymore. We don't care about visuals because when visuals first started really playing its effect back in 08 or in 09, okay, it was something new and people loved it, but we are at a point where visuals cannot carry a movie anymore. I remember in 1970 when I watched 1917, that was probably the last time I had a movie. I had a movie giving me this wow when I look at the visuals. And it wasn't because of the visual, it was more of like the uniqueness of the idea of having everything happening in real time and shot in basically one shot throughout. And if you watch it again, you don't enjoy it that much. It's because of the wow factor or of the unexpected factor or the surprise factor why you love 1917. So unless you give me something that is completely new, I don't think anyone's going to be able to carry a movie through visuals anymore. The main new thing in this movie was how they were able to do motion capture under the water. And yes, it was nice, but you also have the drawback of you not enjoying great acting because you don't see the actors, you see the animal shape they are given. And great acting helps, this turns mostly into voiceover type of acting if you look at it in a certain way. So yeah, I would give it a 6.8, and I hope you all enjoyed my review. Let me know if you have any comments or questions and I'll be happy to respond. Thank you so much.